Meeting of the Genoa Township Trustees will be recorded. The meeting audio and written minutes will be available on Genoa Township's website at www.genoatwp.com or by contacting Genoa's fiscal office. Case number ZC 2022-06, Mira Luna zoning map amendment, AKA rezoning and preliminary development plan. A legal notice, Romanelli and Hughes requesting approval of a rezoning and preliminary development plan to construct 159 single-family dwellings on approximately 129.5 acres west of Rome Corners Road, including 3570 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-21005003000, 3774 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-21005008000, and 317-21005009000, 3912 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-21005009001, and 3990 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-21005010000, all in Galena, Ohio, 43021, currently zoned rural residential, seeking rezoning to planned residential district, also known as Mira Luna, ZC case number 2022-06, previously continued on the record for August 9th, September 7th, and October 5th, 2023, with modifications received December 1st, 2023. At this time, I'll ask anybody who wants to speak this evening to stand and be sworn in. That means anybody in the audience who wants to come up and talk during public comment. Even if you think you might, it's better to be sworn in now and not speak than to want to speak later and not be sworn in. All right? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. You can be seated. The legal notice for this meeting was printed and published on July 26, 2023 in the Delaware Gazette and posted at the Genoa Township Hall on July 14, 2023. An attempt to send notice of this meeting to adjacent property owners was also made. The following were marked as Exhibits A through J. Exhibit A, legal notice. Exhibit B, affidavit of advertisement. Exhibit C, sign-in sheet. Exhibit D, original application and plans received September 15, 2022. Exhibit E, DCRPC recommendation made October 28, 2022. Exhibit F, traffic study dated April 21st, 2023, and approved by Delaware County on May 5th, 2023. Exhibit G, trustee acknowledgement of the Zoning Commission's recommendation made on July 6, 2023. Exhibit H, staff memo dated December 12, 2023 for December 18, 2023. Exhibit I, staff technical review dated December 12, 2023 for December 18, 2023. Exhibit J, comparison table dated December 18, 2023. Exhibit K, all public comments received between September 15, 2022 and December 18, 2023. Exhibit L, revised plans received December 1st, 2023. This time, I'll turn it over to our zoning director, Joe Schaefer.
Thank you, Trustee Vaughn. I ask that everyone bear with me. I'm getting over a bit of a cold virus, so if I heck a little bit, I apologize in advance. Just a couple of items, clarification before I dive into my report. The exhibit list is items A through L, not A through J. That was our error in drafting the script. This meeting was also continued from November 2nd, 2023. We also did not have that in the list of dates. That was the date we actually set tonight as the hearing, where we actually are going to substantively discuss the application. So I guess to build how we got here, originally this hearing was supposed to occur on August 9th. There was a continuance request as the applicant decided they wanted to take a little bit more time to work through some things. That request rolled over the last several months through the fall. Again, on November 2nd, they were ready to schedule this meeting, which is how we got here this evening. It's also why we haven't rerun the legal ad, because we ran the ad for August 9th and then continued everything on the record subsequently to this evening. So with that, I'm going to dive into the report. I'm not going to read the entire document verbatim. I'm just going to concentrate on sort of the big picture things. The legal description sort of covered the basics of the proposal, although I am going to identify things that have changed since we ran the legal description. And then you can see the plan projected on the screen this evening. So jumping right in, as noted, the development is 129.5 acres in size. That's presumably after the right-of-way is taken into account. So the legal advertisement said it was 159 units. The subsequent modifications we received from the applicant has dropped that number down to 150. The breakdown of lots is, it is now 64 patio home lots that are 62 feet in width, 57 single-family lots that are 80 feet in width, and 28 single-family lots that are 100 feet in width. And also, unlike the version that the zoning commission saw back in the summer, the existing home down there on Rome Corners Road at 3990 is now being proposed to be retained as part of the development, which was not the case previously. The applicant has acquired all the property in the development since the time they originally made the application, when they filed the application way back in, believe it or not, September 2022. The land was still held by all the individual landowners out here. They have since acquired all the property, is under their name now. Also, since the time this application was filed, the telecommunications tower that's on the site has long been within an easement. It looks like the little driveway in the area where the tower is situated was carved out as its own little separate parcel, at least according to county GIS records. So that actually adds a parcel number to the list that previously wasn't in the legal advertisement. Even though it's always been part of the site, this parcel number didn't exist at the time they originally filed. So just for the sake of the record, that parcel number is 317210050100001 and doesn't have an address. And Paul Benson brought it up on the screen there. You can sort of see that little sort of hook design of that parcel that accommodates the access drive and the tower itself. And the tower's been there for several years and well predates my time here with the township. So in terms of conditions, I think most people in the room are familiar with the site, mostly field, farmland, some single-family homes, and some forested areas. There are several wetlands on the site, some of which will remain and some of which will have to be mitigated. I already talked about the existing telecommunications tower, and they will maintain a 250-foot radius easement around that for safety reasons. There are 2 ponds on the site. One would be removed, that being the smaller pond located northwest of the former Pendy home on the former McQuillan property. And the larger pond would remain, and it's just southwest of the former McQuillan home that is at 3774 Rome Corners Road. I noted that this application received back in September of 2022. And we'll get into a divergence that's related to the timing of the application and the zoning code that's going to be, that would be effective for the final development plan should this be approved momentarily. The proposed development has been broken down into 2 sub-areas. I'm assuming part of that has to do with how the sewer is flowing out here, because I'm pretty sure the break is about halfway through the site in terms of which direction the water flows out here. Sub-area A is approximately 65.96 acres at the northern end of the tract that fronts Rome Corners and consists of 77 lots. Sub-area B is approximately 63.54 acres adjacent to the south, fronting Rome Corners, and consists of 72 lots plus the existing home that they wish to retain. It appears all lots are fee simple lots. So aside from sub-areas, there's also a phasing plan for this development. They propose to develop it in 3 phases, 53 homes on the first phase, plus the northern and southernmost park spaces, the 3 ponds, and both Rome Corners Road plan entrances. Phase 2 would consist of 45 homes, the road network connection between the 2 non-contiguous Phase 1 portions of the plan, and the westernmost path networks. And Phase 3 would consist of 51 homes, the westernmost park space, and the balance of the road network, including the stub road to the west required by Delaware County. The existing lot to be retained is obviously not shown as being part of any phase because it's already there. The developer anticipates it'll take approximately 3 to 5 years to complete the plan once all the approvals that they needed are secured and actually can begin construction. So again, breaking down into sort of the technical details of the plan, its net developable acreage is 102.81 acres. That's after you take out the wetlands and the acreage of an existing pond. The net density being proposed is 1.459 units per net developable acre, which is below the 2.2 that they would be permitted under the zoning resolution that existed at the time this application was filed. Because they are unlike the original proposal, they are now proposing conservation development standards. And I just never changed that table in the memo. That 1.8 should be 2.2. Minimum open space, there's currently just above 50% at 64.94 acres for open space and common open space. So 50% is the minimum threshold for conservation developments. They are just above where they need to be there. The open space perimeter setback of 170 feet has been met around the perimeter off of the Rome Corners road frontage, with the exception of the lot they wish to retain. So that will, if they do wish to retain that lot and the board is accepting of that concept, there would need to be a divergence because technically that lot sits within the open space buffer. So the code never really anticipated existing lots on roads being retained as part of the PRDs. Historically, we don't see that. So it's just sort of a unique code conflict. It's not like they're trying to skirt the law or get around it or anything. It's just a sort of a odd circumstance we don't typically see. Open space perimeter setback from the rest of the perimeter of the site that doesn't front on a road, they're at 100 feet or more in all those areas. They're proposing to meet these conservation and stormwater setbacks of 20 feet perimeter around those areas. Lot widths, as I sort of noted, there's are either 62, 80-foot, or 100-foot typicals, with the exception of the existing home on Rome Corners. Lot areas are either about 8,370 square feet, 11,200 square feet plus, or 14,000 square feet plus for the typicals of all those lots. And then the existing home, that's to remain, sits on approximately 0.47 acres. Front yard setbacks would be proposed 20 feet for the 62-foot wide lots, and then 25 feet for all the other lots, with the exception, again, being the existing home on Rome Corners Road. Side yard setbacks, 6 feet for the 62-foot front typical lots, which means a 12-foot building separation side to side. And then for the 80-plus foot wide lots, side yard setback of 7.5 feet, which would equate to a 15-foot building separation side to side. And then, once again, the existing home would have its own sort of unique standards. Minimum rear yard setback being proposed is 20 feet for the 62-foot wide lots, and then for all the other lots, 25 feet, again, with the exception of the existing home that they want to retain. That rear yard setback number does not count permitted patio and decks encroachments of up to 10 feet as permitted by the zoning resolution. There's no limited common element areas because these are all fee simple lots. The applicant has generally agreed to comply with all the dimensional standards in terms of building minimum square footage sizes and building heights and driveway setbacks. Driveway setbacks from intersections. The applicant has worked to make sure all the driveways are going to be 40-plus feet from all the intersections. And they've also provided a general agreement regarding driveway and parking lot material in terms of pavement, so no concerns there. We already noted, as you noted in the exhibit list, there was a traffic study done and approved by the county engineer. Copy is in the submission. The conclusion indicates that a northbound left turn lane, approximately 225 feet in length with a 50-foot divergent taper, will be required at each Rome Corners Road entrance. Possibly could change to a single 3-lane section throughout this portion of the corridor upon further review of engineering plans. I imagine the county won't make an official decision until the rezoning stage is done. Should the plan be approved, then the applicant moves into more the actual, what I call sort of the hardcore civil engineering of the site and in the actual site surveying. And I imagine based on the information that comes out of that surveying and that in-depth engineering will be the final decisions on any road improvements. But the county's not going to really be able to provide an answer on that or make a final decision on that probably until we get done with the zoning step. And I know that can frustrate some people because it sort of seems like we're making decision or processing something without having all the information, but unfortunately, that's just how the order of operations goes with these types of developments. The county says they want the zoning to be dealt with first before they deal with the engineering and making all those decisions, so we have to come first in line and have to make our decision before the county is willing to solidify things on their end. So it's just the way it has to work. Streets and parking, it is assumed all streets will be public and designed to meet public standards. There are 6 cluster mailbox areas being provided throughout the plan, since the post office is now wanting those as opposed to mail delivery at every single unit. Letters from all the utility providers demonstrating service availability have been included. Sewer would be provided via a new line constructed parallel to the east side of 71 in conjunction with Delaware County and ODOT, as well as on private property, and then run eastward through the southern end of the Hale trustee property and the northern end of the property formerly known as 6551 Lewis Center Road LLC. And then it would enter from the western end of the development. The zoning resolution requires PRDs to be served by central sanitary sewers or other sewage treatment options approved by the development plan, but is silent regarding whether proof of easements, rights, or external approvals is necessary prior to granting a request to PRD. Fortunately, we pretty much ironed this out with the zoning commission. The applicant was able to demonstrate that they were able to secure all the areas that they need within the 71 right-of-way, I believe, and then also a representative from the Hales came to the zoning commission meeting, and even though they didn't sign anything saying that they were willing to do the easement, they verbally testified that they would be allowing the easement through their property for the sewer. And to the best of my knowledge, nothing on that front has changed, so I believe that's all still valid. And then again, my memo talks about the memo of understanding that previously was provided to the zoning commission and is incorporated as part of the public record, talking about all that sewer extension work. For stormwater, the county engineer will be responsible for reviewing designs and plans pertaining to that, as well as drainage and erosion. Again, that doesn't really happen until the first step rezoning. If the plans would have to be approved first for rezoning, then the applicant does their engineering, submits those plans to the county, and then that's when they really start to work through the nuts and bolts and details of exactly how all the stormwater management is going to work. Regards to open space, sub-areas A and B will share open space. The access to and the land around the telecommunications tower is not counted as part of the open space, just for clarification. In addition to the perimeter and interior open space areas, 3 park areas are being proposed, each with a different design or theme. There's a terminus park, a native grassland park, and a native arboretum park. And I believe the applicant has some slides displaying those in detail, so I'm going to let them go into explain those more thoroughly during their presentation. As I mentioned, the home that's to remain is in the open space buffer, so a divergence to section 903.03.A.4, my memo says A.3, but it's actually A.4, would be required to permit that layout. And again, if the board's comfortable with that home remaining, then it's more of a procedural matter than anything. Let's see, moving on, the development text includes general agreement to comply with all applicable landscape standards. Obviously, specific details on all the landscaping is an item that can wait till the final development plan application, should we get to that point. Street trees are shown in both sub-areas. Again, we'll need more details at the time of final development plan application, should we get there. And they did provide a tree survey, which was quite extensive given the size of the site. Of the 7,534 trees surveyed, approximately 4,778 will be retained, which equates out to about 63.41%. That means about 2,756 of them are going to be removed. The survey did note of those being removed, 109 are ash trees, which are probably not going to survive, and 153 of them are in poor condition, which may or may not be ash trees. In terms of pedestrian connectivity, 5-foot wide sidewalks have been provided along both sides of all proposed streets within both sub-areas. A 15-foot wide pedestrian easement will be provided along the track's frontage on Rome Corners Road as permitted by code to allow us to eventually build a trail or sidewalk network through there at the time when it would be appropriate to do so for connectivity purposes. A 6-foot asphalt trail system has been provided through portions of the open space of sub-areas A and B to supplement the existing sidewalk network. And both systems provide access to the natural forest, wetlands, and streams on the property. The looping system on the northern end of the plan will also feature a wooden platform with a bird viewing blind, as currently proposed. Excuse me. All proposed amenities are permitted uses of the required open space areas. Regards to signage, both entrances would be flanked by a set of brick entry structures approximately 8 feet in height, one of which would contain the plan name and a logo on the front as well as the logo on the side. A freestanding monument sign will also be placed at the terminus of the southern entry road at the eastern end of the proposed central green space. Obviously, the application doesn't mention temporary signs, but obviously under our code, they would also be entitled to temporary signage, just like any other property in the township. Regards to lighting, no streetlights proposed, but each dwelling would include a standard coach light, which may vary. That's pretty typical of the Romanelli and Hughes plans. They don't seem to do a lot of streetlights. We don't see a lot of traditional street lighting plans here in Genoa anyway. Usually what we'll see, if someone does do streetlights, is they'll put a couple of strategically placed ones at intersections for safety. But we generally don't see, at least not up in this vicinity, people doing the streetlights where there's sort of that soldier spacing up and down the entirety of the street. Regards to architecture, they have provided typical architectural standards for the homes proposed in the plan, and the existing home on Rome Corners that is to remain will be updated, but will retain existing materials and fenestration. The plan is going to be governed by a master association that handles the overall development, its uses, open space management, and architecture, and a sub-association will be created for the patio homes due to limited maintenance-free living component unique to those specific units. Staff would like to see a little bit more information in regards to what regulations are going to apply to the existing home on Rome Corners Road, just in case whoever buys that lot decides they want to build an addition or put on a deck. We want to know exactly what setbacks they're going to have to abide by. Obviously, with the zoning changing, we can't enforce the rural residential setbacks, so there's no specific setbacks set forth for it right now in the materials, so that's something that'll need to be clarified. Admittedly, that's something that we can defer to the plan development stage if we're comfortable doing that. Moving along, there are 2 divergences that are being requested, and that's exclusive of the one that I mentioned that they will need to ask for. The first is a divergence to allow the development, i.e. the final development plan application to proceed under and hence the final development plan to be applied under the zoning resolution in effect at the time of the rezoning preliminary development plan that was filed on September 15th, 2022. That being the zoning resolution effective October 31st, 2020. This is not uncommon. This applicant has asked for this divergence before, and it's been granted before. They basically are, we tend to change the zoning resolution over time, and these developments can take years to plan out. And so they're basically saying, we designed this under a set of your zoning resolution that existed at a certain point in time. If you make all these substantive changes before we get to final development plan, our final development plan may no longer be consistent, but they have some vested interest in the design that they've already gotten preliminary approved by the board. So that's essentially what they're asking, is that we not sort of change the rules of the game on them. The second divergence is to section 903.11.b, which is a guideline to limit tree clearing within 15 feet of foundations except for dead or diseased trees. They're proposing not to adhere to this guideline. This, again, isn't them trying to circumvent the code. It's actually probably more of a reflection of the fact that the code needs to be changed because that standard is written in a way that's very confusing, at least to me. Half the standard reads like it's a requirement, and half the standard reads like it's just totally advisory. So to me, that conflicts with itself. So I advise the applicant that the best course of action was just to get a divergence and just answer that, or then we can deal with that section on our end internally later at a subsequent date. Staff comments. The subject tract is located within planning area 5 as identified in the Genoa Township Comprehensive Plan. The land use recommendation for tracts in this area is serviced by sanitary sewer. And again, I'm quoting the plan that existed at the time this application was filed, not the plan that exists now, is, quote, residential development in an approved planned residential development, PRD, in accordance with the zoning resolution. This review is conducted against the plan at the time it was filed. We've since amended it earlier this year. The applicant's review of the comprehensive plan notes that they have, quote, endeavored to the best of their ability given the economic realities of development, to comply with the recommendations of the comp plan for Planning Area 5 by establishing significant setbacks along Rome Corners Road, preserving woodlands, and preserving or establishing open space in excess of the requirements of the zoning resolution. In staff's opinion, the proposal would be consistent with the recommendations of the comp plan that existed at the time the application was filed, should the trustees find the requested divergences to be acceptable. Regional Planning did give a recommendation of conditional approval back in October of 2022. I'm going to forego going through the notes that they had given us as part of that conditional approval because the plan had changed so substantively since the time that recommendation was made, and a lot of the comments we received are from Regional Planning were actually moot because it refers to property in designs that no longer are being proposed or included. RPC staff was generally supportive of the requested divergences, but did have a few thoughts regarding the 62-foot lots possibly not matching the character of the area, reduction of setbacks for smaller lots, which in turn allow for more acreage to be devoted to open space. So that was seen as a positive. And the proposed sign in the right-of-way, which, again, I'm not even going to go into that because that has since been removed from the plan and is no longer of concern. The Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the rezoning and preliminary development plan to the Board of Trustees during their June 12th, 2023 meeting. Again, the version you have in front of you has been modified since the Zoning Commission saw it. The law doesn't allow us to revert the plan back to the commission or any of these changes back to the commission. So it's going to just be incumbent upon the board to review the modified plans and vote on the plans as modified. I'll go through my technical review in a moment, but I'll promise it'll be more brief than this memo. Again, as a reminder, this is a preliminary development plan application. The applicant is not required to provide specific details for every aspect of the plan. We're basically just looking at land use, zoning district, concept, general layout of how everything is generally going to work. Submitted materials are not binding and tentative in nature. Layout and design materials need only be conceptual and should only generally describe, illustrate, and support the plan development. And that's basically a paraphrasing of our definition of preliminary development plan in the zoning resolution. Should this application be approved, the following items should be considered for the final development plan application. Possibly looking at the proposed trails between and behind homes being constructed prior to any lots being sold. If they are not, signs should be erected to identify and or illustrate the future trail locations, especially their starting points in any area where they're adjacent to a lot, as well as the, there was a note about here, community garden and shed, but I don't think that's relevant anymore, so that the prospective buyers are aware of them. Too often plan amendments requests to remove these amenities are sought because their existence was not communicated to buyers and thus became a source of contention with residents who have already moved into the plan when they realize they're going to have a trail in their backyard or along the side of their house. Identifying which improvements will be completed prior to the issuance of permits for dwellings within each phase. Ideally, all amenities and landscaping would be installed in a phase prior to a zoning permit for a dwelling being issued for the next phase. So staff just needs that for administrative purposes, and it's a bit of a carrot that we can use to making sure that things in the development are being completed before they move on to the next phase. Also, staff is suggesting that they provide some amenities at the cluster mailboxes, possibly considering a roof shelter over the mailbox for cover, a light, a waste receptacle, a bench, and designated parking spaces, at least one of which to be accessible if the county engineer's office permits such spaces. And then also just a general question, what will become of the remnant strip of land not being rezoned to PRD that contains the driveway servicing the homes in the vicinity of addresses 3704 through 3728 Rome Corners Road. Mr. David Fisher and I briefly had an informal conversation about this before the meeting started. It sounds like the plan is for that section with the driveway that's to be lopped off as part of the subdivision, and then that land will probably get transferred to one or more of the homeowners who utilize that driveway. So that way we're not left with a strip of land that the applicant owns or that we have to figure out to put into some sort of association. So again, that's probably a detail that we can clean up at final, but ideally I'd at least like to have a conceptual solution for that in place at this stage so we know what to expect going forward. As I noted, should this rezoning be approved, the applicant still will be required to go to county and get all their engineering approvals, as well as apply for final development plan approval from the township, and then pull all the necessary zoning permits, building permits, and all that fun stuff moving forward. So I guess the sort of recap of that is this is pretty much step one of a much longer, lengthier process. In regards to the development technical review, starting to lose my voice a little bit, so I'm going to wrap this up here pretty quick. I'm not going to go through all the comments because a lot of them have been struck through or I've basically spoken to one degree or another already as I went through the memo. Just looking here real quick to see if there's anything else that jumped out to me. There was only a handful of new comments that I added since the zoning commission last saw this, and most of them, again, had to do with the home on Rome Corners that was being retained. And some of it was also just getting that new parcel number that's been created added to the plans and deleting some references to the glass property, which is, for all intents and purposes, no longer exists because it's been since sold and split. So that is no longer relevant. Also, I guess just for trustees' reference, I also did a table for you that compares all the different major iterations of the plan we've seen over time, so you can see how it's evolved in terms of acreage, density, unit count, setback proposals, all the open space, all the major sort of technical elements we look at when we're reviewing a development plan. So with that, Chairwoman Vaughn, I turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. This time I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thanks, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Trustees, David Fisher, Kephart Fisher, 207 North 4th Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43215, here on behalf of the applicant. I've also got with me tonight Jim Olin from Roman News, Gary Smith from G2, our land planner, and Kyle Shreve and Mike Breen from EMH&T, our engineers. So we've got a full complement of people here to answer questions in any of those arenas for you, from the legal to the land planning to the builder developer to the engineering. So all those people are here to answer questions that may arise. This process started on September 15th, 1922, so well over a year ago.
2022,
What did I say?
1922.
Did I say 1922? 2022. It's been a long
I know it's
day.
been a long
It's been a long
time.
day. Right. It has been a long time and not quite that long. So 2022.
God wouldn't let me age for the whole 101 years.
We started off without conservation development standards. During the process, we moved to conservation development standards, which I find sort of interesting because I do a lot of zonings up in Genoa Township, and a lot of people have tried to do conservation development standards, and we've never been able to pull it off. So this, to my knowledge, is the first one that we've ever been able to use that section of your code that was well-planned and well thought out years ago, probably 10 or 15 years ago. So pretty proud of that fact we were able to get to that point with you. During this process, as we worked through the zoning commission, we had 6 different modifications over a period of months, as Chairperson Vaughn mentioned. Interestingly, we started off with, I think, 11 divergences. We know how you guys feel about divergences. We're now down to 2, which Joe talked about earlier in his presentation, that are really technical. We're going to ask for a third tonight in relationship to the house on Rome Corners Road, which was a late addition that came about after we went through the zoning commission. There's been some conversation back and forth. I think Joe has provided you copies of that conversation by email back and forth with he and I today. There was a conversation about buffering for the northern access to off Rome Corners, and as has always been the case with Roman LNUs, they're more than happy to work with adjacent neighbors across the road to assist with buffering and mounding so those people don't have headlight glare in their windows coming to the house. I mentioned, and Joe mentioned as well, the existing house down south within the common open space, we did decide to retain. We basically took, at this last iteration, since we were at zoning commission, we took 10 houses off the main plan and then, but added back 1, which is the existing home down on Rome Corners Road. That house will be a part of the development, assuming you grant us the divergences. It will be a part of the association, so it will have to comply with all the rules of the association. And you've seen our rules many times, things like, maintaining your property and getting permission to do things from an architectural standpoint, putting up offensive holiday decorations. So all of those provisions will apply to the same extent as if that home were in the middle of this subdivision. The only distinction is because that homeowner, and this house will be renovated and sold to a unrelated third party, because they don't really get access to all the amenities within the subdivision, we didn't think it was fair to charge them the base association dues. They will have access, but are they going to use the access? So we're not going to charge them the base association dues, but to the extent, for example, they have violations that the homeowners association wants to come in and say, fix this or fix that, or you've made this violation, they will have to pay those assessments. So the only assessment they won't pay will be the base assessment, which would cover maintaining the open space and that sort of thing. Joe has brought up with his presentation the issue that the home on Rome's Corners was a late addition to our plan, and we have gone over, and Gary will provide in his presentation what all the setbacks are for that house. So we would ask for a divergence to allow that house to remain. Only the house, the barn will go, the house will remain. The garage is still being studied because it is somewhat of a state of disrepair. So a decision will be made whether the garage can be rehabilitated or torn down and a new garage built. So that, other than that, just the main house will remain. It will remain under the jurisdiction of the Architectural Review Board for the subdivision. Its look will stay the same, except it will be updated and cleaned up and made more appropriate for sale to a third party. Joe did a great job with this, take us through this whole process. You'll see that we started off with 231 lots. And I apologize, when we showed up tonight, I said to Gary, you guys can't see this because it's all behind you.
That's okay.
But what we started off with was 6 estate lots that came down to the roadway to the south there. And we got some major pushback from residents, from the county, and from you about those estate lots. And so we took all those off. So we lost 6 lots there from the 231. But over time, we continued to lose lots as we worked through the process with the zoning commission. With,
Not working, Paul? Yep.
With
Just
the-
go to the next slide, if you would.
with the zoning commission and the residents to get down to where we are now with this 150 lots, 149 within the new subdivided areas with the house down on Rome Corners Road. Joe also mentioned in his remarks the cell tower. The cell tower used to be on a lease. It is now simply on an easement. There's an easement, it is a parcel, but there's an easement that allows access to the cell tower and it to be located there. So the cell tower is not a part of our open space calculations. It will be owned by the homeowners association, subject to the lease. So there'd be nothing happening there because the cell tower will be there in long term. Joe also mentioned the little cutout area that's gray on up the top of the map on Rome Corners, which is where a couple of houses are situated. They share a common access drive, or a CAD, that also went back into the area that we're seeking to be rezoned now. The plan would be that we would take away any right to access further back into the PRD area on the rezoning, and that driveway would be deeded to one of those property owners, subject, of course, to the continuing access, common access drive for all those residents. So nothing would change with respect to those people. Joe did a great job here. I hope you had a chance to review this chart. He did my work for me, but it really demonstrates of where we've been over the period of this rezoning. We don't have any issues with either his memo or technical review. We talked about a few things with him today about that. There's a couple of questions here. Joe, I should have told you, there will be no condos. Oh, everything will be a single-family lot. He raised that issue. There will be no condos in the development. We talked a little earlier about the single-family home down on Rome Corners. Gary, Paul, are we able to get to that
Yeah.
slide? Let's talk about that
Paul,
right
if you
now.
could advance a couple more slides. There we go. Thank you.
So you'll see where that house is situated. I mentioned the barn will go down. There's a potential the garage will stay, but that's subject to whether it's determined to be rehabilitated. You'll see that the house sits back, I think that's 70 feet. Gary, is that what you read there on that
Yeah,
slide?
approximately 70 feet
And
from
so
the.
any divergence, we would ask for that divergence from you tonight with agreement that there could be no improvements made to the front of the house that would encroach on that later on. And then I think, Gary, I'm sorry, I don't have is it 65 feet to the south? Does that recall?
No, it's to the south, from the house to the
To
south property
the
line?
South property line? Yeah.
No, it's 19 feet.
19 feet, and what about to the north property line?
To the north property line from the garage, it's 16 feet.
Okay, so the anticipation would be, Jim, there's no reason to think there'd be any additions to the house except maybe something along the rear, right?
Correct.
So we would limit ourselves to those setbacks on three sides with the ability to say, what do you think, Jim, 20 feet in the back, something like that? 20 feet in the back for a patio or bonus room or something like that. So that would be the sole change in divergences tonight we would ask for. The other two divergences, Joe did a great job of explaining. One is simply to say that we get to develop under the zoning code that was in place at the time of our application. And the second one is simply some verbiage in your zoning code that in some places about trees is restrictive and in some places permissive, and simply to clarify that for us going forward. So once again, Joe has always done great work here. I think
now
I've-
it works.
Excuse me?
No.
Now you got it? Okay,
Well, it
good.
worked for a second.
Okay, Gary.
Now it doesn't again.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Gary to give you a brief review of the plan. I know we have people here who want to speak tonight, so we want to be cognizant of that and give them plenty of time to speak as well, so.
So I just wanted to go through a couple of things, because Joe did a really good job. And if you could, Paul, if you could just go to the next slide, please. I wanted to go through a couple of things that we've done and developed with Romanelli and Hughes and kind of their vision for what makes this special. So they, unlike some of the other communities that they've already developed in the township, of course, being, custom home builder, they build really beautiful houses. They do really nice communities. They've got several successful communities in the township, but they wanted to do something that was a little more unique and a little bit different, and even really a little more unique to a lot of developments in Central Ohio. And that's just to really do some kind of interesting things with the open space. So we've got three main open spaces in the development. I mean, there's a lot of open space in the development that's left to a natural or woodland preserve or buffer. But we have essentially three programmed open spaces in the development. So the first one is really, this one here is the larger open space. And this is kind of the park that is right at the terminus of the main entry. And so, this is going to be kind of the focal point of the development for kind of the activity area, the activity zone. And so this incorporates, as you can see, it incorporates lots of trails. One of the things that you'll notice is that when you come in, you're really going to be focused on this attractive sign element that's really kind of inside the development that kind of pulls your eye inward as you come into that entry. And then behind that, they're going to have kind of one of their premier shelter, fireplace buildings that they built in some of their other communities. And Paul, if you'll advance one more time. So this is kind of a look at what you would see if you were maybe standing on the roof of your car driving down the road. But this is kind of the entry. This is the sign right there at the terminus of that entry road with the landscaping. And then in behind it, you can kind of see the pavilion and the walking paths. And Paul, if you go one more. This is kind of a better picture of the pavilion itself. So picnic area, outdoor seating, outdoor fireplace, and then, access to all of the open spaces. And so that's really kind of the programmed and the activity center of the development. And then Paul, if you go to the next one. So the next one is really the large open space, and this is more in the back, in that area, that loop road with the 100-foot lots. And this is something that's really unique to, I'm not aware of any other development that has something like this, but the intent is really to create an arboretum, basically focusing on native Ohio tree species and plant species. And so what they really want to do is incorporate kind of a natural walk through the site and incorporate a wide variety of both single and grouping of of native Ohio tree species, along with kind of the items that you would see in an arboretum, plaques, educational items. Paul, if you could get the next slide, kind of an example of what we would envision that to be, so that you could walk through, ultimately walk your dog, you could walk with your, with your family, friends through, you could jump off the path and get some more information on what some of these trees are, common name, scientific name, and just really create kind of a unique, interesting experience that you would get similar to if you went to Ohio State, went to the Arboretum, or if you went to Dahl's Arboretum over in Licking County. Just really kind of really a unique pastoral experience. Next slide, Paul. And then the other open space is the other loop road really up in the patio home area. And to do something completely different there, which is really more of a kind of a prairie space. So we're talking about Ohio native grasses, prairie land, incorporated with a native wet grassland, so a depressed area, ultimately that will have, will serve as a kind of a wetland or native grass species. And then in amongst that, then some seating areas in, a more mowed and maintained area where you could kind of sit and just relax and reflect. If you go to the next slide, Paul. It's not a perfect representation here, 3D, but this is kind of similar, shows kind of how that would ultimately be organized. And then, Paul, if you go to the next one. So this is just the signage. Paul, if you go cycle to the next one. This is really the entry feature. So this is what you're going to see off of Rome Corners Road when you come into the development. This is going to be the signage. Mix of classical elements, brick and stone, 4-rail fence, painted black. Next slide, please, Paul. And then two of the open spaces that really didn't get talked about are more of the nature trail areas. So in those areas that we're ultimately preserving, there's some features in there that we really want to take advantage of and make accessible to the residents. There's some wetlands in there. So we want to have some trails that take people back into the woods, connect up to the sidewalk, so that anybody in the development can ultimately go in, have a path into those wooded areas and either get to kind of what we're calling more the bird watching area, or the other, the wetland kind of overlook area. And Paul, I may have a few more details. Keep going. Keep going. One more. There you go. So this is one of the areas. So this is, and the intent is that these, we're going to go in as we move through the site and actually kind of take the tree survey, walk the site. We're going to identify where that path's going to go, because the idea would be to flag that path in the field so that we can avoid the roots, maintain the trees and allow that path to kind of weave through the trees in the way that we want it to without doing any damage, and create some opportunities there for viewing of some of these elements. And Paul, if you go one more, I think the other one's up there too. Yeah, and so this is the other one that kind of wraps around the back of the wetland. This is, an area that we would envision more for bird watching. So you can kind of go back in there, go to the little pavilion back there, find seating, and just sit and relax kind of in that wooded area. So really the idea for us is to create some really, really unique amenities, taking advantage of some of the natural areas that we do have and some of the open space that we're creating as part of the development to make a unique experience, actually several unique experiences that are different in each area and space, so that, you know, depending on what mood you're in, living in the development, you can go back and you can have much more of a quiet, contemplative, relaxing walk. Or, you know, you can take your family to a more active space. You can, you know, picnic. You can let your kids play in the open area, you know, let them kick a soccer ball around or throw a frisbee, you know, some of those kind of things. So that was really part of the vision for, you know, what Romanelli wanted to accomplish with this development. And with that, I don't really have any technical details to add. You know, I think Joe did a fantastic job of kind of breaking that all down. So we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I want to close with one final comment. In your presentation materials, we gave you not only a clean development text, but also a red line that showed you everything that changed from the zoning commission approval. I just want to review with you, and also want to thank you for allowing us to take the time with this hearing being tabled to continue to work with neighbors that want to talk with us and to come up with the plan we've come up with now. If you'll notice, since the plan approved by zoning commission, we've gone from 83 of the 62-foot patio homes to 64 of them. We've gone from 76 of the 80-foot single-family homes to 57 of them. We've added 28 100-foot single-family homes and the one home down on Rome Corners Road. So we have increased the size of a significant portion of the lots while reducing them overall in the lot count over the life of this zoning application. And so I'd close the presentation as making a request that as we proceed that we would respectfully request not only the granting of the 2 divergences listed in the application materials, but also the third divergence to deal with the setbacks we've discussed for the Rome Corners house that's currently existing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll open it up to public comment, but before we do, we don't have a time limit at the trustee level. I feel firmly that you shouldn't be rushed in what you have to say. You all gave up your evening to attend this zoning hearing tonight. I would just ask that you be respectful of everybody's time, be respectful of the applicants and each other. So please don't repeat yourself or others while you're speaking. But if you come up to speak, please state your name and address for the record, and also, forget what else I was going to say, but when I think of it, I'll let you know. So, if you weren't, I know what it was. If you missed the swearing in and you came in late and want to speak and haven't been sworn in, then please let me know and I'll swear you in before you speak. All right, at that, and in random, whoever wants to come first, you know. You have to duke it out amongst yourselves. Sorry, that's so short for you.
I'm Charlie Conrad. I live on 3728 Rome Corners Road. You know, I called Renee today to get some questions answered. I appreciate Renee's prompt callback. Just to get some questions answered that I had at the last meeting. And she recommended I call Vince. I called Vince. He called me right back. So I was appreciative of that too. Vince does seem like he's willing to work with me. But I guess some of the issues that I have or questions I have, since I live right on the border of the property, you know, drainage is a concern for me. My downspouts drain into a field tile. 4 of the neighbors, me being 2 of them, have aeration systems that go into clay tile that does drain into Vince's property now. right behind the existing pond that's going to remain. So I'm just trying to look out for myself and my neighbors, making sure that that drainage continues, because if it doesn't, my property's going to flood. Our aeration systems are going to flood. I have cleanouts in that pipe and whatnot that I clean out periodically. If I don't, driveways flood, you know. So I just want to make sure that's addressed if this is approved. The other thing is that I talked to Vince about, and it sounds like from Joe's comments that, you know, obviously I'm concerned about the road frontage being extended into my property. Obviously, I'm going to lose a lot of pine trees. And, you know, depending on how the equipment's going to excavate, am I going to lose some of those 50-year-old oak trees? You know, are those going to be damaged? So those are conversations that I really want to have with you guys. Sounds like Vince is open to it, you know, provided this is approved. But those are some of my main concerns, along with septic. Obviously, you guys are bringing sewage in. He said he would run septic up to my property, and it would be up to me whether or not I want to tie in. Since I have two properties, it's an expense I really don't want to, you know, have to deal with, you know. So I'm just kind of wondering what the engineering requirements are going to be for that, you know, because that's obviously a big expense on two properties. And I have two other neighbors. And I am interested more, I know Joe mentioned about the easement and that grayed out area. That impacts me. That impacts two other neighbors. You had mentioned that it might be deeded to one. Would there be a way to deed it to the other two landowners too, if that's what's going to occur? So I'm kind of in limbo on that as well. I'd maybe like a little more clarification on that. And during the meeting with Renee, we had, you know, obviously I'd like to see more than 100-foot setback for my properties. I was hoping to see that, but looks like it's the same old with the high density that none of us really are in favor of. So, you know, I don't know what can be done on that. So those are some of my main concerns. Drainage being the number one, because if I'm flooded, I'm done. You know, that's got to be kept open. So hopefully you guys will work with me on that, provided this is approved. And the other thing on the road frontage, I do have a well system there too. It's awful close to that easement. If you guys do come on the property, if you find a need to do that. And again, it's all up in the air, I understand. Engineering needs to get involved, but it's kind of the cart before the horse for me, as I was talking to Renee tonight about, you know, there's a lot of answers that aren't going to be answered until you guys rubber stamp it. So hopefully if it is, we can work together, and I'll, you know, be open to any meeting showing engineers where those drainage systems go. I know them well. I've put cleanouts in them. I've worked on them for the last 20-something years. So it's, you know, going to need discussed. So appreciate your time. That's all I have.
Excuse me, could someone
Yes.
point out Mr. Conrad's
Yes.
house on this thing?
Where I am, you mean?
Yeah, your house on that.
Okay. I own this property.
it.
Mom and I own this property. And then Becky Ream owns this, and Anthony Agresti is living in this property. So I guess you guys are talking about this easement back here. I'm just kind of curious as to what's going to occur with that. You had mentioned maybe granting it back to us. That would be great, but I don't know what the plans are on that.
It's up to you.
You want me to respond
Yeah,
now?
can you go to, if it's, you want to?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. So you own the two properties on the south side of that easement, is is that right?
Can you go to the mic, just because people are listening
I just wanna
online
make
and they
sure.
will
You
listen
own the
after?
two houses on the south side.
Right.
Okay. So as you know, that, we call them a CAD, Common Access Drive.
Yes.
It only, not only serves your 4 lots, but it also goes back and serves the back. There's no reason for it to serve the back.
Right.
So what we can do is we can have an engineer, surveyor, divide it up among the 4 lots. Everybody has a little sliver, but it's all subject to the remaining common access drive.
Sure.
Or we can deed it to somebody's, it has no value.
To you guys.
No, well, not only does it have no value to us, it has no value, it doesn't add value to any one property owner's property because it's subject to that easement that everybody shares in. So we're happy to do it either way.
Okay.
Well, quite often we'll do like 4 little slivers and go like L shapes, so everybody
And
has
just
their
add it
ownership
to the
ease. Yeah,
existing
it's
property.
lot, yeah.
Right,
Yeah, so we
right.
can do that either way. Do you want me to go ahead, Madam Chair, and answer his other questions while he's here?
If
Okay, good.
you want to, that'd be great.
So, and I might ask our engineers here to help me on this, but on the drainage issues and the aerations and the field tiles, by law, we can't increase the drainage flow off of our property. But it sounds like you're more concerned about the field tiles that are currently located in this property into which you drain. Nor can we cut those off or damage those in such a way that they can no longer be used. This is Kyle Shreve here from UH&T. So you have that issue.
Yeah, I guess
Additionally,
I'm concerned about heavy equipment running over it, busting that tile. that
those
I'm-
will all be
that I'm
marked.
sunk.
They'll all be marked ahead of time. And then the other thing, Kyle, I'm assuming this will be on ditch maintenance, correct?
If he's going to talk, could you grab a mic or come
Okay.
up and speak, please.
Kyle, this will be on ditch maintenance, right? The county has a ditch maintenance program.
Yes, do I need to say my name?
Please.
Kyle Shreves, at New Albany, or 5500 New Albany Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43054. So the county, they have requirements that you have to maintain tile. And so anything that's coming off of your property will either, where you're at, it seems to be where, in an area we'd stay out of. It's a wetland area, it's a ditch.
Right,
So-
there's a drainage from Linder Way and all that goes under my barn. and
Yep.
through. Right.
So what we would plan to do is, I would like to walk it with you just to make sure, but we take that into account with, anything downstream and what's coming off your property. We would, this, per the county code, you have to know where they are, pick them up and account for that into your designs and your systems. And I think there's a fairly good amount of fall away once you
There
get into
is,
the field.
there is.
So I think we'd be okay in that regard.
But it
so.
does go into your field.
Yep.
It does go, there is a 6-inch ceramic pipe.
Mhm.
I make sure it's clean every year, just because when it plugs up, like I said, I can't even cut grass,
Yeah.
It's like a duck swamp back in my backyard, so.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great to walk with you, understand that. I mean, it's. So what the county's gonna do when we come through and we have these wetland areas, swales, ditches, things like that, they make us put it on the drainage maintenance petition, even all the existing stuff. So Jim's, installed storm sewer, the stormwater management basins, and then anything existing all goes onto a drainage maintenance petition. And they basically get easements placed on them, and then the development will pay into a fund. I think it's reevaluated every 6 years. It's based off of, the infrastructure that was installed, and then that money is then allocated to be able to do improvements to anything that's on the site, storm sewer related, stormwater management, or ditches. So that would be able to, be one thing there. If you were to had an issue, you could call the county, they could help out with that. So,
Now, would I be required, again, to tie into your sewage, or are our aeration systems grandfathered into this?
I would have to double check this, but I believe you can stay on your aeration systems. But I think Jim would have to be able to provide you a way to tie in if you ever wanted to.
If we wanted to.
I think he will provide you a connection. You don't have to pay
Right.
capacity and tap fees to connect to it, but it's there for you to connect to
Right.
it.
If-
I know you mentioned cost. Septic and aeration systems have a life to them. And so down the road someday, you'll have a decision to make. Do I
I
want to
agree.
spend the money to replace my aeration or septic system
Right.
or pay the tap and capacity fees to connect into the sewer
Right.
system.
Right. So it'll be an option.
Right.
I won't be forced, but it'll be an option because, yeah, I've been maintaining it since I've been there.
I guess the last thing I want to say to you, the last thing I want to say to you is, and I hope that Joe and the trustees will support me in this, that Vince Romanelli, he picked up the phone and talked with you today.
Sure did.
He'll meet you out there 100 times during this process.
yeah.
He very much cares about his reputation and that he's doing the right thing by people in the neighborhood with whom he works. And so I can assure you that he will meet with you and he'll try his best to address your concerns throughout the development process.
I appreciate that. It is the first time I've spoke with him though, and I had to initiate it. And, obviously, these are concerns. I'm right up against your property.
Yep.
And, again, I would like a little more setback. I know you guys are probably set in your ways. You want to make your dollars. I get it. But, I don't think anybody's going to want to look at smaller homes being in newer big ones as much as I'm going to want to look at theirs.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yep, I understand it.
Just take that into consideration. I appreciate it.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for your
Okay.
time. Yep,
you.
thank you.
I may just jump in. The applicant may want to talk to regional planning, and they'll probably talk to the engineer's office anyway about how that driveway is going to function. There may be some county requirements exactly on how that
Yeah.
happens, because I know it functions as a common access driveway, but I'm not sure it's actually recorded and deeded as a
Right.
big CAD common access driveways. So
Yep.
there may be some technicalities we can work through. If we know that prior to final, if there's anything you do there to have to make the county happy that then requires some sort of relief from our zoning code to make it happen, I'd like to catch that at final so we can add it as another divergence as opposed to having to go through some variance process later. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Good, agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher, for addressing those concerns. Anyone else, public comment?
Clint Warner, 5920 Plum Road. Well, I'm just up here to say that, it looks like this is going to go through. There's not going to be any referendums or any of this stuff to go with. Now, is Romanelli going to be building all these houses in this development? You're not selling them to another builder?
We're designing this for ours.
Jim Olin, 148 West Schrock Road.
But he knows
Westerville,
their address tonight.
4308. One, I believe, maybe it's two. We have, if you can see the amount of time and care we put into this community in terms of our amenity structure. The things that we're doing in this community are not inexpensive. This is a signature community for us. We are really proud of this site, and this is for us to build. We've got 3 market penetrations. When we look at our Move Down Empty Nester product to the north, we're doing our estate lots, and then we're doing our 80-foot single-family homes over there. So this is designed for Romanel Hughes. It's for us.
Okay,
So-
so, you're not going to be
We have
Selling lots.
absolutely
selling lots to other
zero
builders
intention to sell
and
the
things.
site.
Now, just out of curiosity, your patio homes?
Sure.
Are those on slabs or are those going to be on basements?
We've left it open for slabs or basements, depending on the buyer. Typically, most of our products on basements.
Well, and then listening to 10 minutes of the speeches of this garden and this garden, it sounded like you guys were trying to sell us a lot. Okay? And none of us are going to get to enjoy any of that because we don't live in there. So all that talk for 15 minutes of how gorgeous it's going to be, either we're jealous or we're still mad about it. But it's just one of those deals that looks like things, aren't going to keep it country anymore. And the biggest thing would be the traffic that this is going to do. So you guys haven't made any decisions on a turn lane?
We can't make them in the end. And we got Mike Bream here from EMH&T. We have a traffic study you probably looked at that's in the
Yeah.
file,
Yeah.
but it's only when you get this, Joe talked earlier and the chairperson talked about the two-step process. It's only when you get to the final engineering side of this when all of that's done, that the county comes in and puts its final stamp on what it's going to require. Mike, did I say anything wrong there?
Who pays for it?
Mike Brem with EMH&T, 5500 New Albany Road, Columbus, Ohio, 43054. Kyle. So there is a reviewed and approved traffic study that requires left turn lanes be built at the northernmost access and the southernmost access. Those are going to be 225 feet long. We did review some widening concepts with Mike Love of the County Engineer's Office, and he asked us to look at as a concept. Again, we're out in front of this in terms of the typical process. Actually building a full three lanes from the north access to the south access that would provide two-way center left turn lane for driveways between the 2 points, as well as Linder Way, I think it's called, the cul-de-sac there. And then the traffic study did analyze Plum and Rome Corners, as well as Big Walnut and Rome Corners. Obviously, Plum is geometrically not great with the offset intersection. I know the county engineer's office is aware of that. The additional traffic, that intersection, while it's operationally not ideal, still works to a level of service that would be considered acceptable for a rural intersection in the county. And in terms of who improves Rome Corners Road, that would be Romanelli and Hughes.
That's, one of the big things,
Sure.
is the traffic, had other people in here talking, you'll get killed trying to cross the street getting our mail. A bunch of them, because these people live in those developments like this, and they won't scoot over. You have cars going by you at 55 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour, 2 feet from us. They're not smart enough to see the lane coming this way is empty. You got 10 feet to go around. No, they won't stay right up on you. So that, but the traffic, it's terrible now, and it's not going to get any better, so.
I think the other thing to keep in mind, and Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong here, is that the county engineer is always studying the roadway systems within the county. So this just isn't about this development. It's about what's going on in that area. Am I correct about that, Mike?
That is correct. So the study analyzed the build condition for two different years. Basically, one is this all gets built and open to traffic in 2023, which we're a couple years behind that. But then also looking out 10 years into the future. And a big part of that is exactly what you said, is traffic is increasing. There's an interchange potentially at Big Walnut and 71. So working with the municipal planning organizations to understand how much additional traffic should we plan on, regardless of whether this happens or not. Like a per year increase, which I think was around 7% per year, to look at it, okay, not just an opening day, but 10 years down the road, to make sure that within a reasonable planning horizon that we've accounted for that increase in traffic, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, because I've looked it up, and there was a 10-year, this is what we expect, a 20-year, well, that intersection was on the 10-year 15 years ago. Okay.
That can happen. Sometimes you get to your 10 years in two. But it's an inexact science, but we try to make it as scientific as we can. There are accepted practices for developing these traffic studies that are used actually throughout the United States. And so that's kind of the best crystal ball, so to speak, that we have, is to kind of follow those procedures.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Todd Walko, 4054 Rome Corners Road. First thing, I'm just to the south of what you guys are doing, next to Grand Domenico's. My understanding, you're going to keep that house, the front of it's going to look the same? You're not tearing it down and putting another house there?
No, we're not going to tear it down. We're just going to clean it up and update it. But we've committed that we won't change the look of it.
We're not going to change the
sorry. Yep.
We're not going to change the setbacks. We're not going to add anything to the front of the house. We may change it up in terms of.
And it's only going to have a few
clean
feet
up.
from the property line to the back of the property? How many feet was it?
It was 65, wasn't it,
I
Gary?
think it's 60.
65 from the house to the back of the property line.
The septic system?
The house is going to be attached to the sewer
That's
system,
it's
so
gonna
the septic
water
system's going to go away.
That's good for me, because you can bring it right over to my place. Find out. That's it. Now, is there any reason for you to take the existing fence rows and cut all the trees out, or are you just going to leave them there?
We have no intention of cutting additional trees down.
Because we were talking about earlier, possibly mounding.
Oh, I was talking for the headlight glare across the road.
Pardon?
There was an issue that Joe brought up today about sometimes that northern roadway that comes into Rome Corners. We said we'd work with that neighbor across the street to.
Okay,
help
I'm
with
not
red light
even
glare.
talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm to the very south.
Yeah.
And I'd like to keep whatever existing trees are there already.
So you're below the cell tower. You're south of the cell tower.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is there any reason we'd be messing with
Go
that
in
at
there,
all?
tear whatever's up, just leave that there.
Yeah.
And then we talked about mounding.
That was only up, I talked about mounting up there at where that road comes across to help
I
those
know, but
people with glare.
along the property line, we were talking about putting a mound up. That was
We
earlier
wouldn't be mounting
conversation.
that down there, would we, Gary?
We have to meet the township has a landscape standard for buffering around all existing residents. We're going to have to meet that township standard. Joe, do you know what that, I know we have
Not
kind of
off
a
the top of
tree-
my head, but we do allow for existing vegetation to be retained and count towards that requirement, so long as it's quality vegetation. So
Right.
we are not gonna make you take out good vegetation to put just different vegetation in. So
Right.
if there's good mature trees there that you like looking at and are providing decent screening, I'm not gonna tell them to take them out. I'd rather have them keep them and count
That's
it.
more of a final engineering, we heard talk about this two-step process. That's more of the last stage of this, because we have no interest in tearing out a fence row and messing with that down there. We'd rather leave it as is.
I get that, but I wanted some dirt up.
Well, you do want some.
Yeah, I want a mound to,
Well, the township's gonna make us do some of that, so that should be fine.
that should not be a big deal.
Not down in that area. Gary, you see any reason why it would be? No.
Wouldn't.
Just north of that fence row.
And
Yeah.
Grand Domenico's house is just gonna be looking like the little rustic house you wanna try to keep
Cleaned
that
up,
looking nice.
probably repaint. I don't know what it looks like, but it probably needs.
Who's gonna mow all that green? Is that green space is gonna be
Well, he's gonna,
wildflowers, or is that
whomever
gonna be
buys
mowed?
that house, that land, that's a lot, they have to mow that. The rest of it's gonna be mowed and maintained, all that green space by the homeowners association.
Is there
They'll
gonna-
hire a contractor to do
You're
it.
not gonna run a walking path up through there and around?
Down at that south end, there's no walking path down there. Nope.
That makes me happy too. Okay,
You happy?
all right. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, no problem.
I'm Sandy Young at 7700 Plum Road.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah, I sure do.
Thank you.
I'm also known as that little bitch on Plum Road because I've been here for 71 years. I want to talk about unique experience. And it was mentioned several times, especially with all the trees and all the ponds and everything's going to be saved. The unique experience, I know I can't fight this from happening anymore. I've done it for a long time. But what the unique experience that I'm having right now is I went to the post office and asked for the Postmaster General because there's 13 of us on the south side of Plum Road that we have to cross the road to get to our mailbox. The cars are going 50, it's 50 mile an hour, but they go 55 and 60. I said, please, can we move our mailboxes to the other side of the road? No, is the answer. And there's 13. I'm one of the youngest ones. I'm 71. The people at the very edge of Rome Corners and Plum Road, they have a little boy that's handicapped, and he has a special bus that picks him up. We have elderly people. I mean, it's hard, and people don't stop. people. Matter of fact, I've already told you this before, I carry a hoe with me because nobody wants to hit their car with a hoe. So I just take my hoe over my shoulder and then it will go around me. But it's, I'm one of the people, and I will proudly say, many of you don't like stopping at Plum Road and 3C Highway, but it took 26 years to get that traffic light, to get that because my family, they told us it would take 6 people to die before they would put in a light. It took 4. My husband and I and my daughter went down to all 4 and saw those people and tried to help those people when the life light stopped. Finally got the traffic light. It took 26 years. I won't be there that long, so it can't take 26 years, but there are going to be people that are going to be affected, not now just with the traffic we have on Plum Road, but we're going to have, what, 200, what do you figure? 3 cars per house?
Not for the 62-foot lots.
You're going to,
Mike, you know what your count, he's got, that was all part of the traffic.
1,400 cars a day. And people, when they don't have, they don't realize that we're just getting our mail. Or thank goodness, most of us don't have little kids anymore. I feel Plum Road is unique because it's Genoa Township and it's Berkshire. So I own all the way to the middle of the road because I bought from my grandpa. So most of us have, we've seen a lot, and there's a lot. The traffic is phenomenal. I guess the other thing we need to say goodbye to is something I moved there for, the wildlife. Yes, I'm the lady that has the big round circle that says deer crossing, slow down. It blew away a couple weeks ago, but there's another one coming because we have so much wildlife. The unique experience that you think the people that are coming in there, they're not going to have a unique experience. We've already had it. That's the sad part. What they think, I don't know, maybe they don't think that coming to live out in the country and living out where we do, it won't be the same. And that's, I guess, all I have to say. If you can just try to keep us safe. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Rod Ferguson, 6566 Charles Road, 43082. I just had a couple general comments. I don't really have any specific questions. Back when we were when the trustees were up for election, and you see all these signs that say stop high density, I think the township as a whole went that way with our votes. I just kind of wonder what precedents we're setting with the acquisition of all this land in the assumption that it's going to get rezoned. But yet, I don't see any proposals up there of leaving it rural residential and developing it within those standards. So, as a township, if time and time again, it's the land's going to get bought, then it's going to get rezoned, there's a bunch of money behind it, then that's just going to keep happening. I understand that Romanelli is a big company. I understand there's a lot of money that needs to be made to support that company. If the land was zoned a certain way and a smaller company came in and didn't need those big numbers, maybe they wouldn't be asking for a rezoning. And then I had just a couple other questions. On the, you were talking about the timeline on the zoning and asking that if this gets approved, it goes back to the, I believe, 2021 zoning. I think the reason the trustees spent all that time on the zoning and the code was because there was a need. I don't know that time going by changed that need. I feel like that need is there, and those decisions were made based upon the needs. And then I guess my last question is, you were talking about the free space and how you guys came up with the 51% to meet the conservation. I forget exactly what the terminology was, but is that same free space still there after the trees are cleared and all the trails are put in? That, I guess that's kind of one of my questions.
The answer to that one's yes.
Okay. And then, my last comment, my personal, I live on Charles Road. There's a development that Romanelli and Hughes did behind me. I do want to say that they honored what they told me they were going to do. Now, I had to be my own voice to make sure that happened. But they did honor what they said they were going to do. So I do want to make that statement. And then my last request would be for probably a lot of the neighbors behind me that surround this area is if this all does go through, if some of the money that's made could be spent on keeping the job site clean so there's not 3 years of constant debris blowing in everybody's yard. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment?
Hi, I'm Donna Rocky. I live at 7503 Linder Way, Galena, 43021. My husband and I also own 3725 Rum Corners right across the street from Charlie Conrad, when you were looking at that picture. So we got a lot of property in the area. And I gotta be honest, I feel like I'm living in some kind of nightmare all of a sudden. We've been to all the zoning meetings, we've been watching this. When they put that picture up a minute ago of kind of a sky cam view of when all the houses are in, my heart almost stopped. I can't even believe we're having this conversation. So I just want to go on the record and say, this has been rural residential. We've lived out here 22 years. We bought a second property because we wanted to be sure no one built behind us, and we had our nice little rural residential or country life out here. Everyone here, this is country life out here. And just imagine, I grew up in the country, but then I had to spend 20 years living in the suburbs. Spent a lot of time in Hilliard. I've watched subdivisions be built. I've listened to hammers go, constantly from sun up to sundown. I've seen the construction traffic, the mud in the roads you've got to drive around for. They're saying 3 to 5 years. We're just now retiring, and we're going to have 3 to 5 years of mud and noise and traffic. And then when all the people get here, the traffic. And then, as my brother pointed out to me when I got my first little house in Hilliard, he said, well, that's real nice, Donna. He said, but just so you know, in the summer from about April to October, you're going to hear a lawnmower every moment you're awake. And he was right. Someone, when you have divisions like this, is always mowing the lawn. So you can have the traffic, you can have the lawnmowers. We don't have that right now. I mean, you hear mowers once in a while, but it's just nothing like this. And then the last thing is just the light pollution. No one's talked about light pollution at all, but I've already noticed a big difference in the 22 years we've been out here. I grew up going outside with the dogs at night and looking at the stars. I missed it for 20 years when I couldn't afford to live in the country anymore. First thing we did when we got married was, let's go find a place in the country. We can do this now. And we love it out. We love it out here. Absolutely love it. And I keep staring at it. I cannot believe we're talking about putting this high-density housing right across the street. It just boggles my mind. So I just want to go on the record and say, please don't do this. Don't change it to high-density housing. This is not what anybody wants. Everybody's been to all the zoning meetings. I've seen you guys there. Everyone who lives in the area, no one's asking for it except for some people are going to get real rich off of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
My name's Chuck Lau, 3635 Rome Corners Road. Really didn't plan on talking tonight. Don't have any real prepared. I've spoken in the past and I've been very concerned about the development. One, because of the density. Applaud Romanelli's efforts to try and reduce it. I realized that some of it was just because of the loss of the glass property and things like that, but they have worked a little with us. I had sent Renee an email last summer about my concerns about runoff. Ironically, there was an article today in the news about runoff from developments and flooding. I know it's been said, well, we can't have any more water runoff. I understand that. I'm a geologist and worked this a lot. But right now it's rural residential fields. You stick 149 new houses in there with the concrete for the drives and streets and everything. My concern has been the size of the impound ponds. I'm not sure they're big enough for the volumes. I mean, looking at half-inch rain, you're going to have several thousand gallons that normally now wouldn't be going down, headed southwest there from the prevailing drainage flow. My major concern, though, why I'm up here to talk, is I am the landowner right across from the northern driveway. I've spoke in the past about it. Mr. Olin stopped one time and spoke to us about putting in possibly a mound and like that. We really don't want a mound in our yard. Talked about possibly planting vegetation or whatever to minimize light pollution. I called Mr. Romanelli on Monday, this past Monday, spoke with him, and indicated that our preference is to try to slide the driveway 50, 75 feet to the north. It would be out of the way from shining directly into our house. It still wouldn't impact our northern neighbors because of their trees and everything the way it's set up. He said he'd have to talk to his engineers and people about it, that they would look into it. Haven't heard back, don't know what the final decision is. I just don't, the other concern that's been brought up by numerous speakers is I am very concerned about the existence of the increased traffic. We will have trouble getting in and out of our driveway because of the existing location of this driveway. Putting a left turn lane in only is going to impact us because then we'll have to cross 2 lanes of road to get into our house. They're just, it looks like a beautiful development, but I don't see anything that's being really considered for the existing landowners. I mean, if everybody had wanted, anybody here had wanted to stop the development, we all should have bought the property. So Romanelli's bought the property, it's their right to do what they want to do. But we would like to have some consideration from the trustees to support long-term residents here. We've lived here. I mean, just the increased traffic. I mean, I keep seeing different numbers on the studies of how many vehicles a day. I mean, when the zoning group was approving it, they were talking about 800 vehicles, and now you're talking even more. So even if you did simple math, you said 400 vehicles a day in and out of the driveway A up to the north. That driveway, by their plans, is a 3-lane entrance to the Mariluna. The southern part of their driveway would be within 10 feet of our driveway, and more likely looking like it would overlap the northern edge of our driveway. That just makes it really difficult for us. I guess since nobody else has said it either, wish the trustees happy holidays.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Brian Tornis, 3922 Shagbark Trail. Just a few points to point out. One, I'll echo the previous gentleman on the drainage concerns. Yes, we understand that the rate of runoff can't be exceeded, but as he pointed out, the volume of runoff will increase, which what that means is we receive the runoff from some of the ponds over on Shagbark Trail. Houses that are already getting flooded, we've already called about that part. That flooding will now last longer because that high rate can be extended through the ponds to last for a longer period of time. That's the way the rules are written through the county. So we have concerns with that part of it. And by the way, the neighbor's yard that floods does have a leach field as well. So that is underwater, which is the health department will have issues with eventually. And I guess to the one gentleman who asked about his leach field and whether or not he has to tie in, if they extend the line to you, in front of to your frontage, my understanding from the health department is you will have to tap. So you may want to call the health department on that part. I think it's part of your permit that you've got with your septic system. One other thing that I thought was kind of curious was they were very concerned with the signage for future homeowners in some of those cottage homes if they were going to have a trail. So that way they knew whether there would be a trail in their backyard. But no one's asked the people on Shagbark Trail if there's going to be a trail, if they care if there's a trail in their backyard when they're already a resident there. Okay, and I think everybody else touched on the other points. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Randy Rocky, 7503 Linder Way. And we also own the property. It's on Rome Corners. It's across from this. If you guys make this change, you're just going to screw up a nice area. I mean, that's what makes our area unique, is that we all had rural residential housing. We felt like we were out in the country. As my wife said, we left Hilliard because this is what was happening all in Hilliard. It's a unique area. Now you're going to try and take that away. And I listen to these guys up here all talking about, you know, the green space and, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's like, look at this shiny toy over here, but don't pay attention to this high density crap that we're building. I mean, that's all they've been talking about is all the green space and all the frontage. And the frontage is just hiding everything that they're shoving people into a small area. That's not why we moved out here. That's not why all these people, that's why we're all up here complaining about it. I mean, how's this going to help any of us? What is this going to do for us? It's doing nothing but cause a lot more traffic, for one thing, and I am very concerned about that the only two outlets are going to be on Rome Corners. And our road, Linder Way, is in between the two outlets. So it's going to be an issue. And as I said, somebody's probably going to get killed. And it still won't make any changes. But it doesn't have to happen. When we moved out here, it was rural residential. We figured it'd all be rural residential. And then when these guys showed the virtual, at the one meeting, it looked like a drone flying over the new subdivision. And it made the point that we all been talking about. It does not fit the area. You see all this high density stuff all around nice rural residential housing. Doesn't fit. Doesn't have to be. It's you guys' choice. And the other thing I'll say is the fact that they mentioned that Romanelli and Hughes already purchased this land. They're good business people. They don't do that unless they know that this is going to go through or he has another buyer. If this gets voted down, maybe there will be somebody else buy it from him who will develop it as rural residential. And there's a demand for rural residential housing. And everybody keeps to forget that. I mean, since we moved in, was it the Shagbark area? That's very much like ours. Why can't this be developed like that? Because there's not as much money in it. That's what it comes down to. So you guys don't, it's your decision. It doesn't have to be done.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, Wanda Ross, 3831 Shagbark Trail. I have been to all of the zoning meetings. I have listened to the team here and their presentation, and I echo everything that all of our residents say about the community that we live in. Romanelli built Sage Creek. Is Sage Creek still rural residential? Do you know, out on Harlem Road?
I don't know that, Joe, Jim, that's an
I was just
old.
wondering, could you not mimic something like that on 3 to 5 acre lots and make this whole parcel of land still remain rural residential with those homes that were built probably 15 to 20 years ago? Because we almost bought one instead of building on Shagbark.
Nobody up here is familiar with that
Okay.
development. I would point out if it stayed rural residential, Joe, that's a 2-acre lot size, right?
Yes.
Two
Sage
two
Creek
is what we have, yes.
Sage Creek is rural residential. I imagine a lot of that over there was driven by the fact that there's no sewer over there, so they had to do septic systems.
Right. So couldn't you mimic that on Rome Corners and still keep the same community that we have on Shagbark? You know, just 2 acre lots, septic, leach, $800,000, $900,000 homes. I think you could do it. That's my point.
Next.
My name is Jay Carey, 7540 Plum Road. And I'm pretty close to Rome Corners Road. So people coming out of the north, the light traffic and all that, the light pollution is going to be into the back, the whole back wall of windows where we get light from anyone turning left coming out of. Traffic is a big concern. But first I want to say, these guys build really nice homes. They build really nice subdivisions. They're talking about a pavilion and an arboretum and a prairie and a bird watching area and all these really nice things for the people who live there. You're right. Shiny, look over here. Don't look at what it does to the residents that are already here, the people who voted you into office. Not the ones that maybe will later, but the ones that voted you in. Why you're sitting here now, because we're here. We've been here. They build nice homes. It's a nice subdivision. It's in the wrong spot. Keep it rural residential. Put more like Shagbark through there. Everyone's going to be happy. 129 acres at 2 acres apiece, they could put 65 homes in there. But no, they want to put 149 homes. 65 homes. Keep it rural residential. We're not having any of this mess. But they want 149 homes. I get it. It's about money. I'm sure they paid big money for that land. But what it means to the rest of us, the ones who checked beside Connie and Renee and Mark and said, yes, we want you as our trustee. That's what we did. We're going to have the traffic issues. It's very dangerous going across Plum Road right now. Rome Corners and Plum is a dangerous intersection. Actually, and there's maybe you can do something about this, the township does a poor job of mowing. If you're coming up Plum Road to Rome Corners, you're coming up that hill. When that grass gets very tall, people can't see that stop sign. Twice in 2003, luckily I was looking because I've seen it happen. I almost got T-boned there because the grass is tall and you're coming up a hill and people who aren't familiar with the area don't see the stop sign and they go blowing through that stop sign at 40 miles an hour. Traffic is a real concern there, a real concern. Post office says you got to have your mail delivery grouped in this subdivision. You know why? Because it's high density. It's not, it doesn't fit the area. Let's put shagbark in there. Do it rural residential. They're asking for divergences. You don't have to approve this. Don't get dismayed or don't get distracted by the shiny object of how nice it is and how they're meeting your conservancy standards. That's really great stuff. It shows what the township has done and what they're willing to do. And that's fine. Let them find an area for that. This is rural residential. They're asking for divergences. You do not have to approve this. You do not have to approve this. It's up to the three of you, and we voted for you for this reason. We will remember what happens tonight and what happens on down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Going once, twice? Okay, public comment is closed. We're going to take a 5-minute recess before we start into trustee comment. going to get back in session. All right, we'll start this session with trustee comments, which is next on our agenda. I will open it up to the floor. Any other board member? Anyone?
I'll go. All right. Start at the top. First off, we've worked together long enough as a board and with your development proposals in the past that you know I'm a huge proponent of keeping wetlands. And I know we can't always keep all of them, but I appreciate what you were able to keep this time. Genoa Township has lost a lot in the past, and every little piece that we can save is so important, regardless of where it is. It's important to the wildlife. The cell tower. I'm totally confused on that thing. First, it was a lease. Now the property is owned by Romanelli and Hughes. Is the tower itself on a lease? Is that in perpetuity? How does that work?
So the cell tower's been there a long time. The cell tower's been there a long time, Trustee Goodman. That's on the Grand Domenico property. He had a lease with them, and before Romanelli and Hughes bought that property, unbeknownst to us, the cell company came to him and said, we'll pay off the lease in return for just giving us an easement to access it and to put the cell tower there. So there's no more payments being made to anybody for the cell tower being there, like there used to be.
Sure.
He got a lump sum payment some time ago. And so now they have a lease to use that land regardless of who owns it. And that's why we're recommending we just have it be a part of the open space area. The homeowners association owns it, and the cell tower company has the easement to access it and to use the cell tower that's situated on it.
To
So
be clear,
it-
it's not, the cell tower itself is not included in the open space.
Right, none of that's included in open, I'm just saying.
Just the township required 250-foot radius buffer, that is included as part of the open.
Okay. And it would be up to the cell tower company if at some point in the future they said, we don't want this anymore, and they took it out, then that would be a
Then
future
the homeowner
decision.
association would own it. Mhm.
Okay.
It'll be in addition to open space.
Okay. I was just totally confused on that one. Let's talk a little bit about the property, the existing home that you're keeping. Have you actually been in that house to evaluate it? And the reason that I ask that question, we've had a couple situations in the past. One of them was your development on the corner of Big Walnut and Worthington, where the Durstein home was going to be renovated, rented, sold, whatever. And when they got inside, they said, no, let's just tear this down. And there's a lovely new home going there now. Another one was over on Tussock, where more of a historic type home, maybe not historic, but an older home, was kept to be
The condos.
a facility, yeah. And after some time, the HOA said, we can't afford to maintain this property, and they came back and said, can we tear it down? And yes, they did. I want to make sure that this home is viable, because it's happened in the past.
Vince Romanelli personally went through the home, and at his direction, we're keeping it.
Okay.
So he's very comfortable with the house.
Okay, all right. I concur with Mr. Schaefer's assessment that all those future trails need to be marked or installed ahead of time. We've had a lot of people come back, a number of subdivisions, they're not happy with the trails, they're not happy with the playgrounds, et cetera. So I'd like to not have to deal with that after the fact. I'm concerned about the gazebo area that it's not a gazebo, but the gathering area. Shelter, thank you. If anybody and everybody can use that, where are people going to park if they have a family picnic there? I'm concerned about the fact that they may be parking in front of other folks' homes, and honestly, that's likely not going to go over well with neighbors if this happens every weekend in the summer or whatever. Is there a plan to accommodate those kinds of functions?
our thought was that people would ultimately walk there. We didn't envision a lot of people driving there. We just envisioned that being an entirely walkable community.
We have something similar in one of our communities called Verona, and we have not had any traffic issues there. When they use it, they park it by their neighbors where they're going to visit, and then they go to use the park area. It's a very large green space for the community itself.
And remember, there's only parking on the non-fire hydrant side of the street.
Right. Yeah.
So that's going to limit further how much parking there can be.
I guess my thought is it something that residents can say, we're going to have the Goodman family reunion there on Saturday, or the birthday party for the grandkid, and people come from other areas and then they want to park on the street. I don't want to inconvenience current residents by.
By the way, that's a very good point. And I think that would be governed by the board of the homeowners association. It is a homeowner association amenity.
Okay.
And so I would think that we could actually add to the HOA declaration a requirement that there be some reservation system for that facility to protect against that, so that the homeowner association knows if somebody's going to use it for an event other than just the family going there to have a picnic, that there has to be a reservation system approved by the HOA.
And perhaps some parking guidelines,
Right.
et cetera. Okay. The service letters that were in here, this is more of a question probably for Mr. Schaefer. Do they need to be updated since this has been going on for a while?
I know there was one, I think, that expired a while back and we had them renew, but I'm not sure any of the others had expiration dates.
I didn't necessarily see them. I just want to double check to
No, as
make
long as they
sure.
didn't have like an explicit expiration date, which I don't recall seeing any that were expired. I
looked at
think
that
we
the
addressed
last
the
time we went
one
through the
that
application,
was expired. So, no, I don't have any concerns about those. In fact, since the plan has gotten smaller and fewer units, I have to imagine the situation from utilities is actually only improved, I imagine.
I think that's all I have unless something crops up.
Some of my questions got answered. I was wondering if there was a fall radius for that tower, but it looks like they've accounted for that in your site plan. I also had concerns about the intersections of Rome Corners and Lewis Center and Plum. I know that it was analyzed, but I didn't see anything in the traffic study that had a conclusion on the impact to those intersections.
Mike, can you address that?
I would have to look at that again, and I can do that. But what I saw, reviewing the traffic study again today, was that the intersection was studied based upon its current configuration, and that the level of service of the intersection in terms of delay and capacity with some additional traffic caused by the development, and then just this general increase in background traffic, it's still operated at a level of service C in the worst hour of the day, which is still the goal for rural intersections such as that.
But it's currently a B.
There would be some degradation of level of service, correct? So it's like grades in school, A is great, F is terrible. We don't design for an A typically, we design for a C, but it's a C in the worst hour of the day. If you built every intersection for an A in the worst hour of the day, you'd have a bunch of extra pavement. So there is some increase in delay and congestion, but it's still operating at a level of service C in the 2033 horizon.
Okay, but it does get worse.
It gets worse. Yes, yeah, that's right. More traffic, there's some degradation to the capacity of the intersection, correct?
And then another question, and might be related, if you're probably the best to answer it. I don't know what the right-of-way is along Rome Corners Road, but my guess is if you're proposing to add another full lane, that you're going to be taking right-of-way.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, as Mr. Schaefer said at the beginning, we haven't completed topographic surveys or boundary surveys of Rome Corners Road. However, we did prepare some concepts for how it could be widened and reviewed those with the Delaware County Engineer's Office, Mike Love. So, what we believe the case is there's about 20 feet of pavement on Rome Corners today. So, roughly 9 to 10 foot wide lanes. And those are in a 60-foot right-of-way. So if you think about that, half of the road is 10 feet of pavement and then 20 feet of lawn. What we reviewed with Mike was a worst-case scenario in terms of the widening, which would be to widen to 3 11-foot lanes. And we, again, from a worst-case scenario, from a right-of-way perspective, particularly like on Mr. Conrad's side, that the widening would occur entirely on the west side of the road. So if we did that, we're taking the road from 20 feet to 35, 35 being 3 11-foot lanes and a 2-foot paved shoulder. So if we did that all on one side of the road, that's adding 15 feet of pavement in the worst case scenario to the west side of the road. So that all fits within the existing 30-foot half right-of-way with about 5 feet to spare. So based upon, again, the concept, not completing topographic surveys, not completing boundary surveys, we found that all the widened pavement would fit within existing right-of-way. Now, could there be some grading, some drainage that occurs outside the right-of-way? It's definitely possible. Again, we can't answer that question until we get into the engineering and complete the survey and understand where that edge of pavement grade is relative to yards and so forth. So that was a long answer, but did it answer your question?
No. You think they're angry now if you're gonna widen that roadway and come to them and tell them you're taking right away?
Well, and that's
an answer you should have right now.
Yeah, we don't have it because we have not done the survey. But what I'm saying is all the additional paving, the asphalt would fit within the right of way. It's a question of the grading outside that we don't quite know yet. Things like reconstructing a driveway, we might not be able to get that driveway to tie in within 5 feet. You got to get without making the slope steeper. So those are the details that Mr. Schaefer was alluding to, I think, when he kind of kicked that off, that, if this gets approved and then we move forward with surveys and meeting with the county engineer's office and trying to get some more clarity on what those improvements are.
And the turn lane is from your northern drive to your southern drive, that's it. It doesn't go from Plum all the way down to Lewis Center.
That is correct. There would, in this concept, it's not a requirement of the traffic study, but in this concept, there would be a full 3-lane section from the northern driveway to the southern driveway. North of the northern driveway would taper back to existing conditions before it gets to Plum. And same thing on the south side. There'd be a 225-foot northbound left turn lane. So you're going to have that 3-lane section extend 230 feet plus or minus south the southernmost driveway, and then it will taper from 3 lanes to 2 lanes before you get to Big Walnut.
So I'm curious, with this much thought, why wasn't anything presented as an exhibit?
Well, I guess we explained this. This is the same presentation we made at the Planning Commission meeting that I think was on June 12th. Yeah, we have not prepared an exhibit. Again, we're out in front of where we typically address this type of thing in the planning and engineering process. We did prepare a conceptual exhibit that we sent to the county engineer's office to get buy-in on the.
I think we would be concerned about and want to see that.
We've just explained it in words so far.
Okay. We talked about the headlight buffering. I appreciate your offer to appease the neighbors on that. The south tower we talked about. I think that's all I have.
I have some concerns of my own, and then I want to address some that were brought up during public comment. You're asking for, tonight you're going to ask for a divergence for the home that you've decided to keep.
And that's just for those setback areas around it.
Yes. You kind of touched on streetlights, but I guess, I live in a Romanelli subdivision, Walnut Grove Estates. You have lights at the intersections. I consider that a street light. The intersections, any intersection within the subdivision, will you have a light at those intersections? So there
It
is.
wasn't planned.
You weren't planning on it?
It wasn't planned.
Okay.
Once again, to mitigate as much light pollution as possible.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. And thank you for addressing Mr. Conrad's concerns. And also, Mr. Lau, who came up here, he's the one who spoke with Mr. Romanelli today. He, during his comments, is recommending that you slide the northern access point 50 to 75 feet to the north. Is that possible?
Because it just came up today, I think you all know, working with Mr. Romanelli, that he will do whatever he can to be accommodating to people, but that is a design issue that he would have to look at. I know that that gentleman also said he wasn't interested in the buffering that was offered.
Right.
So all I can tell you is, it came up tonight. He had a conversation with Mr. Romanelli today. We all know Mr. Romanelli, I think, pretty well to know that he will work with people as much as he can to accommodate them and be a good neighbor. That's all I can offer tonight. Jim, anything more than that you could suggest?
Okay.
I'm just wondering if you're just moving it to another house. That's the question.
Well, according to him, according to Mr. Lau, he said
Right.
no, but once
know.
again, nobody else has looked at that.
Right.
Will also be the fact that the county engineer is going to have to approve
That's what I was
its
wondering too.
location, so.
Yep. Few residents who live on Rome Corners Road, depending on what you do with that road, they're bringing up the point that they could have difficulty turning either, if you're coming from the south, left into their driveway, crossing 3 lanes of traffic. Can you address that, anyone?
I guess I want to address it in the context of Mr. Antonette's comment earlier about a drawing. All this engineering is going to come back before you for a final development plan. You're going to have an opportunity to look at it again. We won't know what the county engineer is going to require in the way of roadway improvements until that work's done. I think Mr. Brame went through a mathematical calculation that suggested there would not be any requirement of right-of-way takes. There could be some issues with grading plans and connection of driveways. I think that what I can offer is we'll do our best to make sure that those people have access points, and the county engineer will make sure that they have access out to Rome Corners Road to go north and southbound. I think the thought probably is that the center lane probably assists in that to some extent, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons. So pro or a con. It could be viewed as desirable that there is a center turn lane for someone to wait to turn, like southbound, to get into the center turn lane to make a left turn into the driveway, if your driveway is on the east side. And it's also true that to turn out, you're crossing an extra lane of traffic. I mean, that is the case. So it's not going to be unlike any other 3-lane roads that or elsewhere in the county in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Can someone address the drainage concerns? And there were quite a few people who live in Shagbark who have concerns with runoff, and it's already wet there. They talked about a current pond draining into their area.
Can you help us identify where Shag Park is for starters?
It's the, yeah, cul-de-sac that runs
Okay.
off of Plum
Okay.
on the northern backside of the development.
Kyle, you want to take that on?
So, I think what was said previously is, it's true that the county standards are set so that you will have more volume of water, but you're releasing it over a slower time period. The one thing that we will look at when we do the designs for the basins, I think as a preliminary review, what we were doing was there's a stream or a swale along the south side of Shagbark. Kind of trying to point it out where that second basin, there, there's a stream that runs along the south side of that, or in that general area, and then out across the properties on the south side of Shagbark. We will kind of consolidate that and bring that water into that area, whereas right now it has the potential to be able to kind of go wherever it wants. And so we'll kind of capture it and have a little bit more control over where we put it. So I would hope that would, finalize itself as we move into final engineering. Again, it's kind of, we're not there yet. But as you can see, there's water headed that way right now. We would put it back into the stream area towards the south. And again, we'll go through, the next step is going through the county with preliminary engineering. We'll solidify that with them at that point. So I'm hoping that answers your question. I think we have a little more control over it at that point.
Yeah, I think the gentleman's point was there's going to be more water over a longer period of time, but it's a slow release. It's not like it's going to be a flood.
Nope.
Okay.
But your point is some of the redirection is going to mitigate that.
Correct. And when we design the ponds, they'll follow Delaware County Code.
Right.
It's, we look at it holistically as a whole development because there is, it's a large development coming off of there. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything else?
Just a couple things, I guess, I just wanted to clarify, because we've talked a lot kind of about Rome Corners Road. Just to kind of reiterate, the county isn't going to let us interrupt anybody's driveway service or access through their permitting process. The other thing too, and I think, Mark, you brought up just the question about showing that drawing. And I think what he was trying to articulate is that drawing was shared initially as a concept with the county, but it hasn't been approved. So the danger for us to bring that drawing to you tonight is everybody in this room sees it, and then when we're back with final engineering, the final development plan, should we get to that point, and we've got something different because ultimately the county had a different idea, everybody would say, well, that's not what you said you were going to do. It's one of the reasons why we don't get into final engineering kind of at the preliminary development plan stage. So that's probably why we really didn't bring that drawing to this meeting, because ultimately the county hasn't signed off on it and said, yes, we agree with this idea. Really, it was just our first bite at a concept to share with the county.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, question?
I was just going to add in, regarding the divergence that we're possibly adding this evening, I would just recommend a little bit change to the wording that I heard thrown out earlier. What I think how it would need to be worded is basically a divergence to section 903.03.A.4 to permit a lot within the required 170-foot open space setback. I'm not so concerned at this stage regarding the divergence, how far the house is set back from the road. That's really a separate issue. Really what we're just asking, what that divergence is asking for is permission to allow a lot to be within the open space buffer.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
I don't want to accidentally, with the way it was worded previously, we may have, it could have accidentally tied our hands in a way we didn't want to, so.
I agree, that's fine.
All right, moving on, the next thing is divergence review.
I will note there, item G, you can actually cross out, that standard got added as part of the last zoning resolution amendment, and I had Paul Benson add it to the script, but now I'm remembering we're reviewing this under an older version of the code where item G in that review didn't exist. So
Okay.
just point of technical clarification for you.
I got one more question. The issue about your sanitary sewer, what's the impact if that deal falls through? Did we deal with this once before on another project?
If they can't get sewer to the project, they're not gonna be able to do it. So it would get rezoned and
Don't.
it would sit as PRD, and then someone else would either have to, A, figure out how to get sewer there and figure out how to make the PRD work, or B,
And it may not be permanently used.
correct. But that's the risk we run with really any
Or
development.
Romeo Use comes back and rezones it to RR or something
That's-
else that will
yep.
work for them.
Or
But I-
finds, or finds an alternate route for the sewer.
Yeah, yeah. But we have the routing, and we have the routing
Sell
figured
your
out, so,
packages.
yeah.
Divergence review, the first one is a divergence to allow development of the application to proceed applying only the zoning resolution in effect at the time of initial application, September 15th, 2022.
I have no problem with that.
I'm just looking.
You
have
want
a-
me to read through this?
You can read through it.
You can if you want. It's not necessary, but it doesn't hurt you.
So just from our experience on zoning, we go through each one of these and give it a yes or no,
Okay, do it.
evaluate after that, so.
I was doing it in my head. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the board reviewed each divergence request against the standards set forth in section 2707.05 of the Township zoning resolution to determine if such a request is warranted. Divergence requests shall demonstrate how granting the request will advance public interests and general purposes of this zoning resolution by promoting or not having an adverse impact on one or more of the following purposes. And we can do all three, answer all three instead of going through this 3 times, right?
Okay.
So the first,
And just to clarify, you're including the one we've requested tonight?
yeah, I think we
Okay,
can do that.
okay, thanks.
The conservation and protection of the natural resources, scenic areas, wildlife habitat, and the historical and unique natural features of the land. So the question is, does any of those 3 divergences adversely impact any natural resources, scenic areas? And I think the answer is no.
Mm-mm.
The health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the present and future inhabitants of Genoa Township. I don't think any 3
I'd
do
say
that.
no.
The quality of life within Genoa Township through the protection of the total environment, the prevention of nuisances and hazards, and the provision of adequate light, air, and convenient access to property. And this is just regard to the divergences, not the project. Just keep that in mind, please. No?
Yeah.
The assurance of the compatibility of land uses which are either adjacent or in proximity to each other. That would be no. The orderly development of all lands within the township to its appropriate use,
No.
and the most appropriate use of land to facilitate and provide adequate public and private improvements. Oh, and you say G is,
Yeah, G was the
Removed.
standard we added back in April that wouldn't be applicable because they're under an older version of the resolution.
And Joe, for the record, divergence 2, and can you rattle off those numbers again? 903 something. Then I
Oh, for the
couldn't
one
write
we're
that
adding this
fast.
evening?
Yes.
it's on the second page.
I couldn't find it.
For the one we're talking about adding this evening.
Three, you mean number three.
It'd be section 903.03 .a .4.
Okay, got it, thank you. So divergence to 903.03.a.4.
To permit,
To permit a lot within
lot.
the open space buffer.
yeah, and you can add on as further detailed in the submitted materials, just to sort of wrap it all up. If the applicant's okay with that, I don't want to put words in their
Yes.
mouth.
As further permitted, submitted in applicant materials? Okay. So we're good with those three. We'll add the third and no other divergences, so then we move down to motion.
If you're ready to move on to that stage.
Well, anybody?
So we are going to vote on amending the zoning, and we vote again on the development plan.
Correct. We've been advised to do those as two separate motions because the rezoning is subject to referendum, whereas the preliminary development plan is more of an administrative, quasi-administrative act.
I don't see amending.
Well, that's the rezoning. That's the motion to, regarding the zoning map amendment. So that's on page 5 of 11 in the script.
Okay, but nowhere it says amend? We have to add that?
The motion would read, as scripted, it would be to make your recommendation and thus, if assuming it's, we always, usually motions, just for everyone in the audience, edification is usually made in the affirmative. So just because they're making a motion to approve doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be approved. They still have
Right.
to vote on that motion. So I'm not presupposing anything here. I'm just going by the way we
Right.
generally handle business. So as written, it says, move to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval and thus approve with modifications the zoning
Okay.
map amendment, AKA rezoning. So that's the first motion. That's
Okay, I see the
rezoning of the
modifications.
property
I didn't
from
see
the
that.
RR to PRD.
Got it.
And then the second motion that you would make and vote on would be a motion regarding the preliminary development plan, which is on the next page.
Yep.
And we did also add that PIN number of that cell tower lot into
Okay.
the script, just so you're aware. That did get covered. And the with modifications part is very important because that's identifying that the plan you're voting on is different than the plan that the zoning commission voted on.
Yes, well, thank you. I couldn't find, there's a lot of words here.
Yes,
Couldn't
there
find the
is.
word. All right, so I'll move to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval and thus approve with modifications the zoning map amendment, AKA rezoning request by Romanelli and Hughes, which seeks to rezone approximately 129.5 acres located at 3570 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-210-500-3000, 3774 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-210-500-800, and 317-210-500-900. 3912 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-210-500-9001, and 3990 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-21005010000, and 317-21005010001, all in Galena, Ohio, 43021, from rural residential to planned residential, as further described, detailed, and illustrated in the materials of the subject application ZC case number 2022-06, also known as Mira Luna, and furthermore incorporating exhibits A through, is that correct, L? Okay. In accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, this motion to approve the rezoning request, which is subject to referendum, will go into effect 30 days after today, January 12th, 2023, and is based on the following findings of fact and conclusions. Said amendment is found to be consistent with the Genoa Township Comprehensive Plan pursuant to Section 108 of the Genoa Township Zoning Resolution. Or said amendment, well, sorry. I'm going to leave that, correct? I don't have to read the last part, correct? Yeah.
And I'm just checking the date on you, I think January 12th. We may have struggled counting to 30 with our math, because I don't think that's quite 30 days. Not that it matters in the grand scheme of things, because Ohio law is going to trump any error we make in doing our math, but I at least want to try to give you the right date.
It's 17th, right? The 31-day month?
I think so. Yeah, I think that sounds right. I came up with the 16th, but I could have counted wrong also.
17th?
Well, if tonight's the 18th, then December's a 31-day month, then 30 days would be January 17th.
So I'll amend it.
State law is going to trump
You're
it,
right,
so.
and Joe's right about that.
My motion, and it will take effect January 17th, 2023. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Roll call, trustee Antonetts.
No.
Trustee Goodman.
Yes.
Trustee Vaughn.
Yes.
All right, we still need a motion regarding the preliminary development plan.
I'll move to concur with the zoning commission's recommendation of approval and thus approve the modifications, the preliminary development plan incorporated within the subject zoning map amendment proposed by the Romanelli and Hughes contingent upon the successful adoption of said zoning map amendment. The proposed plan seeks to construct 150 single-family dwellings and refurbish an existing home on approximately 129.5 acres located on 3570 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-210-500-30000, 3774 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-3100-500-8000, and 317-210-500-90000, 3912 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-210-500-9001, and 3990 Rome Corners Road, PIN 317-210-501-0000, and 317-210-501-0001, now zoned planned residential district, and as further described, detailed, and illustrated in the materials of the subject application, ZC case number 2022-06, also known as Mira Luna. Thus, motion of approval is preliminary in nature, shall still require submission and approval of a final development plan application, and shall incorporate exhibits A through L, as well as any commitments made by the applicant during this hearing, including.
They did do the option for buffering across from the entrances.
Or investigate the
Right.
possibility of adjusting
Yes.
it,
Right.
the northern access. I think that was the only one, right?
Yeah, the buffering across the street would not be something zoning could hold them
That is
to,
true.
however.
So really, there's none.
Other than just cleaning up, I think, the materials, giving me a clean copy.
What about looking into changing the northern entrance, moving that so that you don't have? But I'd like to get it on documented.
Yeah, if you want them to investigate that.
That's fine.
So I guess just for the record, we're talking about investigating the relocation of the northern access point. And I'm sorry, what was the other one?
To eliminate any impacts to adjacent neighbors.
And were we in agreement about providing staff just updated copies with that divergence included?
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't want, again, I don't want to put words in
No.
the board's mouth. I just want
Wait
to
a
make
minute.
sure we understand.
Investigate relocating the northern access point entrance, right? Or you just call it an access point. Is that good enough? Okay, what was the other one that you just said?
To provide the zoning office with a clean copy of materials, including the additional divergence 3.
Provide zoning office with a clean copy of
Of materials,
materials.
including,
Yep, I got that
Divergence
part.
number 3.
Mhm. Okay. Anything else? I further move to approve divergences as they relate to the preliminary development plan as further detailed in Exhibit L from the following sections of the Genoa Township zoning resolution. Divergence to allow development of the plan to proceed under the zoning resolution in effect at the time of initial application date of September 15th, 2022. Divergence from section 903.11.b to allow tree clearing outside of the 15-foot from foundation limit. And a divergence to 903.03.a.4 to permit a lot within the open space buffer as further illustrated in submitted materials. Anything else? This motion to approve the preliminary development plan, which is not subject to referendum, is based on the following findings of fact and conclusions. Well,
Read the one on the previous motion.
Yeah, it's consistent
oh,
with
right
the
here. Yeah,
comprehensive
it's
plan.
found to be consistent with the Genoa Township Comprehensive Plan pursuant to Section 108 of the Genoa Township zoning resolution. Anything else? All right, do I have a second?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
Roll call, trustee Antonetts.
No.
Trustee Goodman.
Yes.
Trustee Vaughn.
Yes. Okay, at this time, I will announce to close the meeting at 9:04 PM. And I'll move to adjourn at 9:04 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Trustee Antonetts.
Yes.
Trustee Goodman.
Yes.
Trustee Vaughn.
Yes, motion carries. We are adjourned at 9:04.